Hello and welcome. You're watching Global Lens with me, Archana Solanki, and this is our Prime Ionic Wealth studio. Let's start with the headlines first. The AI sell-off continues to drag global market stocks decline across Europe and US for the fourth straight day. Bitcoin and gold prices also see a sharp decline. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says there is no hiatus in the relationship between India and the US as trade talks continue. His statement comes a day after Trump's advisor Kevin Hassett said a trade deal with India is close. United Nations Security Council endorses US President Trump's plan for Gaza, which includes deploying an international force and a roadmap for a sovereign Palestinian state. But Hamas rejects the resolution, claiming it does not meet Palestinian demands. All right, let's talk about the big story that deserves the spotlight and will have implications for both India and Bangladesh. A dramatic scene unfolded in a Bangladesh court yesterday as former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was handed the death penalty. The verdict, which was delivered in absentia, finds her guilty on 3 counts related to last year's violent student uprising, and that is incitement to violence, ordering the killing of protesters and failing to prevent atrocities. Meanwhile, her supporters clashed with police to lodge their protest against the court verdict. Police had to use tear gas batons to disperse the demonstrators for families of the 1,400 people who, according to UN, this is the death toll we're talking about, the UN, who lost their lives. The ruling brings a measure of long-awaited closure, but Hasina and her now banned Awami League have rejected the tribunal's decision outright. She has called the process rigged, alleging political vendetta behind the judgment. The development has put India-Bangladesh relations under the spotlight. Ever since her ouster, Hasina has been living in India, and despite the death sentence, New Delhi has not expressed any plans to extradite her. The interim government in Dhaka, led by Mohammad Yunus, is pressing hard for her return to face justice. India's foreign ministry, in a brief statement, said it remains committed to the best interests of Bangladesh, but declined to comment on any extradition request. All right, to understand the situation better, I'm joined by 2 special guests, Salah Shoaib Choudhury, who's a senior Bangladeshi journalist, and Veena Sikri, former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Thank you so much, Ms. Sikri and Mr. Choudhury, for making time and speaking to us on this very, very important development. I'd like to start with Veena Sikri, who served in Bangladesh from 2003 to 2006. Ma'am, how do you see the death sentence? Many critics, including yourself, have questioned the legality of the trial by Bangladesh's International Crimes Tribunal, and the irony is that it was created by Sheikh Hasina herself.
Yes, actually, the ICT, International Crimes Tribunal, was created by an act of parliament adopted by her father in her father's time, Sheikh Mujib's time, in 1973. And in 2009, when Sheikh Hasina was elected for the second time, she updated the original parliamentary act and also actually physically created the International Crimes Tribunal and started the trial of those who were accused of war crimes during the 1971 Liberation War. That is the only mandate of the ICT, to try those who are accused of war crimes during the 1971 Liberation War. So there is absolutely no understanding or authority or mandate for this ICT to now try Sheikh Hasina, because Mohammad Yunus, as chief advisor of the interim regime, decided to try her through the ICT. But there's no parliament. Parliament has already been dissolved. There is no authority under which this constitutional decision, in alteration of the original act of parliament, can be taken. So it is the very first question that comes up in this question is about why has this been done through the ICT. Of course, second question is about the judges, because one of the first things that Mohammad Yunus did was to make sure through the mobocracy, through mob violence, through attacks on homes, that all the judges who were there in the Supreme Court, High Court, in the ICT, including the prosecutor, they were all forced to resign. And new people have been appointed. said to be very close to Jamaat-e-Islami. But the point is, there is no mandate under an interim government for new judges to be appointed, for them to run the ICT. And the prosecutor, the newly appointed prosecutor of the ICT, Muhammad Tajul Islam, he was earlier the one who was defending the Jamaat-e-Islami members when they were being accused of war crimes. So from being a defendant on the war crime criminal side, he now becomes the prosecutor of the ICT, and is has made sure that Sheikh Hasina gets the death penalty for genocide and for crimes against humanity. I think the third point is also very valid, that why is this one-sided effort or one-sided approach of the Yunus regime? On the one side, they're only trying Sheikh Hasina for what they say is genocide and crimes against humanity. But actually, a lot of the violence and the killings and the attacks on Awami League, on the media, on the minorities, the Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, Sufis, and Ahmadiyas, all this took place after Sheikh Hasina left the country. And many people died. The numbers, in fact, have never been revealed. But instead of having a fair trial that covers everything, they have only covered it up to the point that Sheikh Hasina left the country, and all the other killings, the people have been given indemnity because they were supposed to be part of a so-called revolution. So all these biases are built into the situation, and I think that one has to look at it. The extradition request to India, I'd like to say just one point. India has not received any extradition request because extradition process is highly legal, complex, and long drawn out. You cannot even say you have received an extradition request unless it is accompanied by all the legal documents, the court case that has been filed, the validity of the court that where it was filed, the arguments, the judgment, the evidence provided. It's a huge, complex process, and that evidence is then examined within India, within the country receiving this extradition request. And that itself is a long process because you have to see the issue of dual criminality, what is the provisions of the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, and all of that, So it's something which just cannot happen overnight. So for India has been very correct in giving a very calm and sober response to these very irate and strident demands for extradition of Sheikh Hasina by saying we will talk to all the stakeholders, and Sheikh Hasina is certainly one of the stakeholders, and we have the best interests of the people of Bangladesh in mind. So government of India is committing itself and being very careful.
Right. Ma'am, as you said that it's a long drawn process, the whole extradition process. For the benefit of our viewers, if you could explain it to us, if in case the requests come to India, if India chooses to extradite her or chooses not to, what do you think would be the implication of such a move in both scenarios?
I think that, extradition cases, unless they're totally politicized, and they should not be politicized because this is a legal process, extradition cases should not be allowed to harm or in any way affect the relationship between two countries. And we have always maintained we have a very strong people-to-people relationship with Bangladesh. We have always maintained, even on the first day, on the 8th of November, 8th of August 2024, when our Prime Minister gave a message of felicitations to Mohammed Yunus, he said we want to continue the economic cooperation and good relations with Bangladesh. So I think that there is absolutely no reason to mix up India's response on the extradition request, which I think will be very long drawn out. The case has to be filed in Delhi. Sheikh Hasina's lawyers can come. Bangladesh government lawyers can come. All that will be there. There's no need to mix up the continuation of the extradition case with the development and the progress in the India-Bangladesh relations. We have many issues with Bangladesh at this time. There is Pakistan, who is trying to embed itself with Bangladesh in every way, with the army and so on. There is the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed that are talking about, attacking India through Bangladesh. All these issues are there. These are security concerns, which the government of Bangladesh, if they have the best interests of India in mind, should be looking at, should be ensuring that there is no harm to India's security interests. So these are many issues that we should continue to discuss with Bangladesh. The extradition process will go on by itself.
Right. Ma'am, please stay on with us. We also have Mr. Choudhury, who's a journalist from Bangladesh. Mr. Choudhury, thank you for making time for the benefit of our national audiences and our global audiences. Could you give us an update on what the situation is right now in Bangladesh?
Thank you very much, Ms. Archana Sonakshi, for kindly inviting me. Actually, I'd like to little bit give a background that the so-called judgment in the ICT, it was a well-drafted, well-orchestrated drama. All the members in the prosecution, they are members of Jamaat Islami or is student wing. So what we have seen, very unfortunately, that immediately after the verdict pronouncement, there was attack on the residence of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman by certain people. I mean, the mobs. They wanted to turn the house into a playground. And according to my information, most of those people who went to turn this property into a playground, they belong to the stranded Pakistanis in Bangladesh. Secondly, why Yunus is demanding extradition? Because there are mobs very much active in this country. And as soon as Sheikh Hasina steps into Bangladesh, she will become a victim of mob lynching. So, in the name of extradition, Yunus regime wants to assassinate, murder Sheikh Hasina right at the airport. And with this situation, I mean,
Right.
any country in the world would not send someone to be victim of mob lynching. And in Bangladesh now, as a complete chaos, no law and order, nothing, mobs on the street,
Hmm.
Islamists on the street, jihadis on the street, and as Her Excellency Ambassador Veena Sikri mentioned, that there are activities of various terrorist entities, including Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Ansar al-Islam, Al-Qaeda. So with this situation, I
Right,
mean,
right.
we can only tell you, Ms. Achana, that Bangladesh is in a is a burning inferno.
Right. Ma'am, as you heard Mr. Chaudhary, he said that in case Sheikh Hasina arrives in Bangladesh, she could be a victim of mob lynching. You know, Sheikh Hasina has always been known as an all-weather ally to India. But in your experience and in your understanding, what kind of a prime minister was she when it came to India-Bangladesh relationships?
Well, I'd like to mention one very important point. When I was High Commissioner to Bangladesh, 2003, 2006, and Begum Khaleda Zia was the
Yeah.
Prime Minister, that time one of the biggest issues between India and Bangladesh were the security issues. You know, the activities of Northeast Indian insurgent groups, they're, being given shelter by the Khaleda Zia regime, and they're operating from all kinds of places. And then the use of Bangladesh by Pakistan for terrorist attacks against India. These were the two biggest security issues that we were facing at that time. And the Khaleda Zia government was just not interested in seeing India's point of view or in taking any action to support India's security interests. When Sheikh Hasina became Prime Minister in 2009, the first thing that she said was that she will accept India's security red lines because she sees no interest for the people of Bangladesh in having illegal insurgent groups on their soil or in using in using the soil of Bangladesh by Pakistanis for attacking India. So once she accepted India's security red lines, then the bilateral economic and trade and connectivity cooperation just boomed. It just went from one strength to another, and on a totally mutually beneficial basis, this economic cooperation increased tremendously. We saw that Bangladesh had economic growth of 6.5% and more for 15 years, and they were ready to come out of the least developed countries category. But now, with the after Mohammed Yunus has taken charge after the regime change operation, the exact opposite is happening. Bangladesh is falling back into the least developed countries category. Their rate of growth has halved, inflation is high, factories are closing down, unemployment is high. So I'm saying that we had very good relations with Bangladesh under Sheikh Hasina
Hmm.
because of the mutual understanding and mutual
Okay.
benefit. So we would like that to continue. We've said, as I said, on the 8th of August last year, we said we are prepared to continue, but the Yunus regime has something else in mind.
Right. Mr. Chaudhary, what we saw yesterday, you know, what happened in the court, a section of lawyers or people who were present in the court erupted in joy as soon as the judge said that Sheikh Hasina was guilty on all those counts, and people were clapping. Uh, what exactly is the sentiment on ground? And as far as the Bangladeshi media is concerned, you yourself said that Sheikh Hasina might be lynched by the mob if she arrives. But does that eruption of joy transcend the whole country? Does it move outside the court as well?
Ms. Hasina, since last year's jihadist coup, Bangladesh has been hijacked by the US deep state and Pakistani ISI. And Bangladesh no more belongs to 18 crore Bengalis. So as far as freedom of press, as you mentioned, press is under heavy censorship. No one can write nothing. And as we mentioned about the celebration at the so-called ICT, as I have already explained, they are the members of Jamaat Islami and the student front of this party. And most interestingly, the so-called defense counsel of Sheikh Hasina, he was smiling, saying that he is unhappy with the judgment. So it means everybody was celebrating because everything was set. It was well orchestrated. It is a big drama, nothing else. In the name of convicting Sheikh Hasina, prosecuting Sheikh Hasina, it's a big drama. And why they are demanding the extradition, once again, I would like to say, they would like to kill Sheikh Hasina right after she arrived at the airport. They had originally plotted to assassinate her during the last year jihadist coup, but she has fortunately been able to move
Right.
to India. But this time, if they get her, they will kill her.
Right, that is a very disturbing piece of information that you're sharing with us. But thank you so much, Mr. Choudhury and Ma'am Veena Sikri, for making time and speaking with CNBC Prime on this very, very important development that's unfolding in India's neighborhood. On that note, it's time for a short break. On the other side, Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says there's no hiatus in the relationship between India and the US as trade talks continue. His statement comes a day after Trump's advisor, Kevin Hassett, said a trade deal with India is close. More on that when we return. Welcome back to Global Lens. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal reassured that there's no hiatus in India's relationship with the US, despite recent tensions. Now, speaking at the 22nd Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, Goyal explained that a comprehensive partnership between the two countries includes various elements, which may not always progress at the same pace. This statement came just a day after White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett mentioned that the US is close to reaching a deal with India, but added that the situation is complicated due to India's dealings with Russia. However, Hassett emphasized that India and the US remain friends and are working towards a resolution. Ties between India and the US have faced strain since President Trump imposed tariffs on Indian goods, including a 25% duty on imports linked to India's purchase of Russian oil. According to the Global Trade Research Initiative, India's exports to the US dropped sharply by 37.5% from $8.8 billion to $5.5 billion between May and September 2025, marking one of the steepest declines in recent memory. These tariffs, starting at 10% in April and rising progressively, have negatively impacted nearly every major export segment. Meanwhile, almost every other major economy, barring India, has already struck a trade deal with the US. Moving on, the United Nations Security Council on Monday voted to adopt a US-drafted resolution endorsing President Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Gaza. This resolution authorizes temporary international force for Gaza, which would ensure a process of demilitarization of Gaza. Here's a report decoding the details of the resolutions and the impact it will have.
The draft resolution has been adopted as Resolution 2803.
The UN Security Council on Monday voted to adopt a US-drafted resolution endorsing President Donald Trump's plan to end the war in Gaza. The resolution indicates that member states can take part in the Trump-chaired Board of Peace, envisioned as a transitional authority. It would oversee the reconstruction and economic recovery of Gaza. The resolution also authorizes an international stabilization force, which would handle a process of demilitarizing Gaza. Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas agreed last month to the first phase of Trump's 20-point plan for Gaza. Now, the UN resolution is seen as vital to legitimizing a transitional governance body and reassuring countries that are considering sending troops to Gaza. Here's U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz.
This resolution charts a possible pathway for Palestinian self-determination after the Palestinian Authority has completed the necessary reforms, where rockets will give way to olive branches and there is a chance to agree on a political horizon. It dismantles Hamas's grip. It ensures Gaza rises free from terror's shadow, prosperous and secure.
Hamas, in a statement, reiterated that it will not disarm. The militant group argued that an international force inside Gaza would become a party to the conflict, effectively in favor of the occupation. Russia, which holds a veto on the Security Council, earlier signaled potential opposition to the resolution but abstained from the vote. Moscow's ambassador to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, complained that the resolution does not give the world body a clear role in the future of Gaza.
In essence, the Council is giving its blessing to a U.S. initiative on the basis of Washington's promises, giving complete control over the Gaza Strip to the Board of Peace and the ISF, the modalities of which we know nothing about so far.
The Palestinian Authority welcomed the resolution and said it was ready to take part in its implementation. Trump celebrated the vote as a, quote, a moment of true historic proportion in a social media post. He added that the names of members of the board and more, quote, exciting announcements will be made in the coming weeks. The resolution has proven controversial in Israel because it references the future possibility of statehood for Palestinians. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Sunday that Israel remained opposed to a Palestinian state and pledged to demilitarize Gaza the easy way or the hard way.
Billionaire investor Peter Thiel has fully exited his Nvidia position, offloading nearly $100 million worth of shares. The move comes amid growing concerns of an AI-driven bubble in tech valuations. Nvidia made up almost 40% of Thiel's portfolio. His exit comes just a week after Japan's SoftBank also sold its entire stake in the chipmaker. Moving on, Larry Summers, a former Harvard University president, has decided that he will step back from public commitments. This after his emails with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein were made public. He went on to say, and I quote, "I'm deeply ashamed of my actions and recognize the pain they have caused," end of quote. The emails that were made public showed Summers, a former U.S. Treasury Secretary, communicating with Epstein until the day before his arrest. A day before Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's visit to Washington, President Trump said he plans to approve the sales of US-made F-35 fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. This follows a long-standing bid by Riyadh, which has previously been denied access to the jets. However, the deal has raised serious concerns. According to Pentagon intelligence, China could try to acquire advanced F-35 technology through Saudi Arabia if the sale goes ahead. Amazon is returning to the U.S. bond market after 3 years, planning a 6-part issuance to raise nearly $15 billion, mainly to fund its growing artificial intelligence infrastructure. According to Bloomberg, this move comes amid a broader tech debt surge. Just a month ago, Meta Platforms announced up to $30 billion in bond sales, while Oracle and Verizon have also lined up large offerings to support their AI and infrastructure needs. Chinese travelers have cancelled hundreds of thousands of tickets to Japan amid a diplomatic dispute over Japan's stance on Taiwan. Japan has sent a senior diplomat to Beijing to calm tensions after Prime Minister Takeshi said Japan could get involved if China invades Taiwan. In response, China warned its citizens against traveling to Japan.
Japan has warned its citizens in China to step up safety precautions and avoid crowds. That's as the most serious diplomatic clash in years continues between the two countries. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi sparked the dispute after suggesting that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger a military response from Tokyo. A Japanese envoy met his counterpart in Beijing on Tuesday to try and dispel tensions, but there were no signs of breakthrough. China's foreign ministry said it had pressed it to the meeting for Takaichi to retract her remarks. But a top Japanese official suggested Tokyo was in no mood to do so. Beijing has urged its citizens not to travel to Japan, sending tourism-related stocks in Japan plunging. Chinese people form the largest number of tourists to the country, official figures show, accounting for nearly a quarter. Meanwhile, Chinese state media has aimed vitriolic commentary at Takaichi, and a Chinese diplomat has posted threatening comments about her online. It's prompted Japan's embassy to encourage citizens living in China to respect local customs, not travel alone, and take extra care when with children. Beijing claims democratically governs Taiwan as its own and has not ruled out using force to take control of the island. Taiwan's government rejects Beijing's claims. Taiwan is located just over 68 miles from Japanese territory, and the waters around it offer a vital sea route for Tokyo's trade. Japan also hosts the largest contingent of US military overseas. Tokyo on Tuesday said that the government hoped issues over Taiwan would be resolved peacefully through dialogue.
All right, time for some trending stories now. Good news for football fans. The US will fast-track visas for 2026 FIFA World Cup ticket holders. President Donald Trump announced matches will be held in 11 US cities from June 11 to July 19, 2026, with Canada and Mexico also hosting. A prioritized visa system will be set up for fans. Carlos Alcaraz has withdrawn from the Davis Cup finals due to a swollen hamstring. The Spaniard aggravated the injury during the ATP finals, where he lost to Jannik Sinner in the title match. The season officially ends for the 22-year-old, who claimed 2 Grand Slams, played 80 matches and finished the year ranked number 1. The British Royal Mint unveiled a special £2 coin to honour the late Freddie Mercury, frontman of rock band Queen. The coin features Mercury in his iconic pose from Queen's 1986 Wembley Stadium performance, with his back arched and arm outstretched. The company behind the famous children's song Baby Shark, Ping Fong, made a splash on South Korea's stock market. Its shares jumped over 60% on debut and raised nearly $52 million. Founded in 2010, the company now plans to expand from kids' content into broader family entertainment. And Gifu Prefecture in Japan is tackling its bear problem with a bright pink hunting drone equipped with googly eyes, a megaphone and firecrackers. The drone emits loud barking noises to scare bears in areas with frequent sightings. Since April, around 2,020 people across Japan have been injured by bears. And with that, it's a wrap on another edition of The Global Lens. Goodbye and many thanks for watching.